Hello and welcome to another episode of eDiscovery Chicks, the podcast about all things eDiscovery and legal tech, hosted by two gals who are currently really vibing on Netflix and rotting. Anyways, we're your hosts. That's Bree.
And that's Angie. Wow, that's really selling things, Angie. I can't wait to listen to this podcast with these deadbeats on the couch.
We're so exciting. Vivacious.
I've been struggling with this. So I'm the kind of person that I never stop. And if I'm doing anything, I'm usually doing 3 things at one time. I honestly think that I might have ADHD, but that's another topic for another day.
I think it's just eldest daughter syndrome.
I've been sitting there rationalizing to myself that it's okay to want to hide under your covers in your room in very cold air condition and watch all the movies on Netflix and even DoorDash food when you have perfectly good food in your refrigerator. It is okay. And it is okay to not want to go anywhere or see anyone. It is okay to not even want to see your own family. And it is even okay to do this more than one day in a row. Now, a week, we might be having some problems, but a couple days here or there, that's okay. And I'm having the hardest time trying to rationalize to myself that this is okay. Because we're so used to blowing and going and being the best and the most. And I'm like, I'm a terrible mother and a terrible wife, but I just need to watch more Netflix and play games on my phone.
Sometimes
My brain's
you do.
hurting.
No, sometimes you do. Okay, you know what'll make you feel better? I live 2 blocks from a grocery store and I get them delivered.
That sounds like something I would do, actually.
And the funny thing is, I'm like, it's fine. I have a toddler. Whatever. I'm busy. And then it's like, no, you just take your stupid toddler to the grocery store. Like, it's an activity.
Grocery shopping with a toddler is an adventure all in itself. And there are so many things that can go very bad. And I've had many experiences myself.
Thank you. You're making me feel better about getting my groceries delivered.
Yeah.
This is true. Also, on the topic of wanting to just like rot or whatever, I just want to validate that. I think rest is productive too, first of all. And secondly, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be productive for it to be okay. I'm like you. I'm constantly go, go, go. I've got a list. There's 20 things on it. I'm never going to get through all of them. Somehow I do. And then I am stressed out the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just have to rot.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It makes me feel better about myself.
You know who rots? Michelle Obama. Sometimes she rots, probably. You know who else probably rots?
Oprah probably does.
Oprah probably rots
probably
sometimes.
Has like her own special rotting PJs that are $1 million.
She probably has a rot room.
She probably does.
She's got a rot room. Everyone needs a good rot sometimes.
Oh man, when I grow up, I want my own rot room. Speaking of Netflix, by the way, I've noticed a trend that most of the new movies, and maybe they're just the ones that are coming to me, I don't know, but they're all like British. And so everybody sounds way smarter than us. What happens in Europe when they're like, oh, all these American movies with these dumbasses, of course they're killing each other. They're Americans. Listen to how stupid they sound. Like, is that how our accents sound to them? I don't know.
No, I actually don't know. I asked someone this once when I was in Europe. And they were probably being nice, but they were like, no, we love American accents. And I was like, sure, okay, but
I don't believe
really
that.
Not cute.
No, but it has been fun being able to relax, especially after all of the crazy hurricane madness here. And
question for you though. When you get really into a TV show and you like binge it, do you come out of it feeling like, I could do that?
I sometimes feel that way. Most of the time, I wish I could do the things that are being done because I watch a lot of thrillers, cops and robber dramas, murder shows, and stuff like that.
Love a good murder.
But I'm always like critiquing them, like, well, that was really fun.
Okay, so this is where I'm at in my journey with Alone, which is so this is also on Netflix. So it's this show, and they put like 10 survival experts in the wilderness, and they're all by themselves, and they have like a GoPro and a tripod, and it's just like last person standing wins.
Oh, wow.
Right. So they go out there, they can only take 10 items. It's very fun, but I find myself watching it, and these people are incredible. Like, they are geniuses, but I'll be sitting there watching this human who has made it in the wilderness for like a month and a half with nothing but the stuff on their backs. And I'm like, really, you couldn't make a better gill net? Sitting on my couch, just mainlining popcorn and with one hand and having a cocktail with the other. That Gillnet is bullshit. Like, do better.
If you and I ever do an eDiscovery Chicks Amazing Race, this is what needs to happen. Well, actually, you're a great driver. I forgot about that.
I am.
I'm like, I can be the getaway driver and then you're the runner. So I can just drop you off. You run inside, kick ass, and then I'll swing back up and pick you up on the flip side.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Quick pause on the driving thing. So for those who don't know, this is also like a side passion of mine. I have a 1977 𝗧𝗏𝗃 that I've like restored and whatever. They have country clubs for gearheads, or specifically like there is one in Seattle. And so she now lives there. She being my car. They're all females, people. Get it right.
Wait, do we have another eDiscovery chick?
No. She's just... But there's like a restaurant. So I feel like this sort of perfectly encapsulates what it's like going there. So I took her there last week, made my valet appointment, drop her off, give the keys to the valet, went inside where I got lunch for myself, which was a nice little chicken Caesar with truffle dressing. Gal in the seat next to me at the bar goes, "Do you ask the bartender if they have any flavored vodka?" And he goes, "Well, we do, but it's ones that have real fruit and no added sugar." And so then they sort of settled on, which vodka she was going to drink. Then I went into my little conference room that I had, reserved in the clubhouse, which is directly next door to the secret cigar lounge hidden behind a book.
This is all kinds of bougie fancy.
It is. And I love it. I'm leaning into my middle-aged white man phase.
I don't know what middle-aged man's going, "Do you have any strawberry-infused vodka?"
To be clear, no, it's not me. I had a beer.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's more
Definitely
manly.
not. Yeah. With my salad.
Although my husband would probably dig strawberry-infused vodka, I say that.
Don't knock until you try it.
So that's pretty fancy, Angie. Like, I might have to get an old car. The problem would be that the old car I have is not going to look like the car you have.
Oh, I bought mine for $900, and it was the gas tank was so rotted when I got it that I had to drive it on the shoulder of the freeway because it couldn't go faster than 25 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I graduated college a little bit early, didn't have anything else to do with myself till law school, and was just like, I'll go buy a car.
That's kind of fun.
My 𝗧𝗏𝗃 is named Helen of Troy.
Oh, I love it.
I've also had Marion, Moira, Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. You got to name your cars. It's fun. Okay. Well, hi.
Well,
anyways, should we talk eDiscovery?
I guess we should.
So today we're talking about self-collection and why it is not a good idea. It can seem pretty straightforward. It can seem very cost effective. Have your custodians gather their own data, load it into your platform, bada bang, bada boom, done.
Yeah, but there are some significant risks that come along with that. So some of the topics we're going to cover in today's episode are the importance of data integrity and authenticity, why you may need to get some help, some technical expertise, what is chain of custody and why a clear chain of custody is critical, security and privacy concerns, cost implications, and potential sanctions, like God help us all. But we're also going to talk about that 1% of the time that it might be okay to self-collect and why. So anyway, that's our episode in a nutshell.
We're going to scare the shit out of you and then give you a good permission structure.
Yeah. We're going to tell you all the reasons why you should be productive and then tell you it's also okay to rot.
Right. All the things. All right. So first up, we've got data integrity and authenticity. Let's define those concepts and then maybe talk about why they're important here. When we say data integrity, we are talking about the accuracy and the consistency of the data throughout its life cycle. And in the eDiscovery context, we're talking about the integrity of the data from its original source all the way through collection, processing, review, analysis, and production. We want the integrity to remain intact throughout all of those steps in the workflow. This is crucial in the self-collection context because any modification that happens, if you don't handle your data carefully and you're not cognizant of the ways that different data can be manipulated when you collect it, it can compromise the reliability of that evidence.
That's right, Angie. So data integrity is that assurance that the data hasn't been modified by any unauthorized parties, either while in transit or at rest. I like that definition because it reminds us that we must store our data in a safe way and transfer our data in a safe way. And then on the flip side is data authenticity, which is the assurance that data is and what it claims to be and hasn't changed since its creation. That's when we prove up things in court or to the other party. This data is genuine. Also, when we talk about data authenticity, we want to make sure that we're able to prove up where it came from. We can track it back to its original source. This data came from company ABC. We can tell that by the metadata, which we've talked about in previous episodes, and that it came from the department drive. That's clearly here in the audit or in the chain of custody log, that there's no alterations, or as Angie would say, no fuckery has happened with your data.
This is one of my favorite words. No fuckery is afoot. So yes, +1 to all of that. Also, preserving both the data's integrity and its authenticity is essential because a breach of either of those can lead to challenges in court where the opposing party might question the reliability of the evidence presented, and they might be successful in challenging the reliability such that it is excluded from evidence. Sometimes I think about both of these concepts as a train going from a station to a station and stopping along the way at different stations in order to get from like A to B. And if you miss a single station or the train falls off the tracks at a single station, it's not going to get to the end of the road. Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes I think about us all being in a train wreck when I think of this. Okay.
I think also when we think about data integrity and authenticity, you're going to laugh at me. It's sort of like buying a fake purse, because if it isn't reliable, it's worthless, right? If we can't prove that this is a Birkin, it's worthless, kind of, right?
This is an example that only Angie can give.
Okay, so say you go to like a vintage shop, right? And you find a bag that purports to be a Birkin. For those who don't know, Birkins, and I don't know, why would you? This is stupid. Birkins are like some of the most expensive, most exclusive handbags that you can buy, and they'll run you anywhere from like $10,000 to like $1 million. Just like fuck you money. You have to have fuck you money to buy one of these bags. So anyway, you're at a vintage shop.
Bree knows nothing of these things.
Oh, I mean, I know of them. I'm never in my life ever going to even like be in the orbit of one of them.
You never know. I mean, eDiscovery chicks might hit it big.
Maybe we'll make some rich friends.
Oh, good.
Okay. So say like you're at a vintage shop, you find this bag that purports to be a Birkin, and you're like, fuck yeah, let's go. But then you start to look at it a little bit closer and you see some irregularities, right? Like maybe the stitching isn't uniform. On the inside, there's a label that says made in China. In short, like you're seeing some red flags that maybe this isn't what it seems like it is. And so you ask the vendor, hey, tell me more about this bag. Where did it come from? Who sold it to you? Do you have a certificate of authenticity? Yeah, that's actually a thing for handbags, by the way. And say, the vendor sort of demurs, right? They're like, I got the bag from a friend. I really like them. I've known them a long time. But they don't give you anything substantial to back it up, right? They're not giving you a certificate of authenticity or any other like concrete indication that this bag is what it looks like it is. Are you going to buy that bag? Are you going to spend $10,000 on that bag? Absolutely not, right? Because you question whether it is what it looks like it is. Well, that's the same thing. When you show up to court with evidence, the court's going to ask those questions of you, right? They're going to ask you for that certificate of authenticity. And if you don't have it, then the court's not going to buy it. Your evidence isn't going to be able to come in. And if your evidence can't come in at trial, it loses its leverage.
All along the way, we got to think about this because that's ultimately what our mission is that we have to prove up the authenticity of that data. There's lots of different ways that we do it. Sometimes it is through the metadata. Sometimes it is through an audit log. Sometimes it is through a chain of custody. Sometimes it's legitimately a certificate of authenticity that somebody has signed or attested to. Sometimes they have to testify to that in court. It can take on a lot of different looks and feels at the end of the day, but it's all the same thing. It's all proving up that your data is what you say that your data is. It came from where you say it came from. There's not any missing pieces to it.
Yeah. I mean, again, like this is so critical because if you can't use it in court, Like if somebody's coming after me and they're trying to use evidence as leverage in like settlement negotiations or something, and I know that evidence isn't admissible in court, meaning like it's never going to get in front of the trier of fact, it's never going to impact liability, I'm going to just be like, fuck off, man. Like that's kind of worthless to me.
All right. Well, I think we've covered the what is data authenticity and what is data integrity. And you know why that's important. You know why you got to cover yourself. But all of that is being brought up and discussed because that's exactly what is at stake here of being altered if you decide that you want to self-collect your data in anticipation of either reviewing it or producing it or whatever your next steps are. So some of the common pitfalls in self-collection that compromise that integrity that we've just been talking about are metadata alteration. So what does that mean? Well, when we self-collect, we're generally doing so by saying, hey, if Angie has all of the documentation on the legal drive, because we know she works in a law firm and in-house, she's saved all of her data to the legal drive. I'm sure that's not how you do things in real life, but we'll just pretend. And we tell Angie to self-collect, and she's like, oh, I'll just move it to Bree's drive. Well, guess what just happened? Now that document is timestamped as being modified on the date that Angie moved it. It's now coming from a totally different folder, and my folder is completely inappropriate. It's like stupid shit from legal. And now that's in our in our metadata.
It's like a bunch of cat photos.
Exactly. And so we've completely altered the identity of that data. So that's one pitfall that you really got to pay attention to, is that we want to be able to preserve the original metadata. What is the last time that it was actually altered? Was it the last time that someone who made edits to that document went in and made changes? Or is it the date and time that somebody moved it to a staging area to get ready for production? Because that's not very helpful at all if that's the case. Also need to make sure that we have a complete data set. So if we have custodians or employees within our organization, we're like, hey, Joe, go get us all the documents that have to do with such and such matter. Joe's like, I don't know what that is. Maybe they mean this one email, or maybe they mean this one picture that somebody sent me on Teams that one day. Or maybe this is what they're thinking. I'm just going to get those things. That's probably good enough. Here you go, legal. Have fun with your subpoena. Well, what Joe didn't do is actually go through and run any keywords or know the legal matter well enough to understand what relevant data it really is and where it might really reside. And when Joe kind of handpicked those documents or communications, he didn't take into considerations all the other things that might come along with it. Like, well, I mean, the picture's great, but what's the text message where they sent the picture to you? Or, oh, this file's great, but this is version 5. What happened? Are there any other versions? Like, maybe I need to see all the versions of this document. Well, we didn't get any of those because Joe just kind of collected what he thought was important and didn't spend a lot of time on it. Anyway, that's just an example as to how easy it is to have an incomplete data set.
I actually want to jump in here and add one more thing, which is that this concept of relevance. And when we talk about that in the context of self-collection, relevance has a distinct legal definition, right? It means, in sort of plain language, I'm not trying to quote the federal rules of procedure here, so don't come at me. But it basically means anything that that tends to prove or disprove any fact related to any claim or defense of the lawsuit. And that's super complicated. Like when you sue someone, you send a complaint and it has paragraphs and paragraphs of allegations. And then when you answer a complaint, that also has paragraphs and paragraphs of counter allegations and defenses. And so it's really, really broad. And so only someone who has a bird's eye view of what the matter is should be making those relevancy determinations. And usually that's not going to be the individual custodian. So to make sure you've got a complete data set, you really want someone with that higher altitude perspective.
I totally 1,000% agree. And I think that we also need to remember it's usually not the dude or the dudette in IT that we asked to go get data.
And that's not a knock on IT, right? Like
No.
I wouldn't know the first thing about doing their job, right? Like I break every piece of electronic equipment I touch, you know? So we shouldn't expect them to do our job.
Yeah. And most IT professionals that I know and love in my life take pride in doing their job with great accuracy. And that's a source of contention for them. Like, I can't do my best with this work because I don't understand what you're really trying to accomplish here. And it's
Right.
really beyond my level of expertise.
Everyone's got their areas of expertise and everyone has their soft spots, and it really behooves you to work together.
Amen, sister.
Preach.
All right. So another pitfall that we have with self-collection, that's what we're talking about,
Yeah,
is
right.
handling and storing data improperly. So the example that I'm thinking of is, hey, we got a subpoena. They need some very specific information from a small department. I'm just going to ask Susan over in that department to just get this stuff, put it on a flash drive and mail it to me. Cause I just need those documents from her and I don't have time to put together a network share and talk about Dropbox and all the things. I mean, she's in BFE, Texas, and she didn't even know how to use any of that stuff. So I'm just going to have her put all this stuff on a flash drive. Oh my God. Red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag.
All
right?
the red flags.
Right. All the flags. Because now, not only are you altering that metadata that we talked about a second ago, that's so important. Now you're putting a flash drive in the US mail, people. Do we know what kind of travesties happen in the US mail system?
Many travesties.
No, that is not a good idea. But in the same sense, we don't want to, just simply email data to each other either. Like, hey, Susan sent me 50 emails with a PDF attached. Well, what does that metadata look like? Now, who's the author? Well, now, when was the last modified date? And did it even get here? We have to think about the way in which we are transferring data to one another. The best thing, of course, is to use a secured site. But when we're not doing that and we're slipping something in the mail or we're emailing each other or we're putting it in an unsecure location, we're opening up ourselves and others to all kinds of issues. I mean, what happens if we have a data breach? What happens if we don't get the complete data set delivered and we don't produce the entire all the documentation? I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen, from not so severe to super severe if you breach PII, right? So anyway, those are some pitfalls that we have with self-collection.
Yeah, I totally agreed on all of that. So should we switch gears a little bit and talk about how important technical expertise is and what it can do for you?
Yeah. I mean, technical expertise is really important from several different standpoints. One of them is we want to have expertise, of course, with the way in which we are collecting data. And we've talked about that in our EDRM series when we talked about collection. Make sure that you have the right tools in place so that when you are collecting data, you're doing that in a defensible way, that you're preserving all of that metadata in a way that you can prove up in court that it's authentic, right? And you want to be able to make sure that you're also preserving that integrity of what you're collecting. In the same vein, you want to make sure that you have expertise internally if you're an organization to understand, hey, I can trust and believe that everything I think I'm getting is from this data source. Like, the thing that comes to mind in particular is understanding data retention policies in your own organization. When I'm going out and looking for fill in the blank, and I think that I'm getting everything from this location and I'm storing it here, is it going to be safe and preserved here? And am I getting everything I'm thinking I'm getting? Or do I need to check in with whomever is in charge of the data retention policy in this location to make sure that's not going to get wiped or swiped or altered in any way? Also, when we talk about expertise, we also talk about eDiscovery experts. Maybe we need to reach out and get help because we got some third-party subpoena, and as much as we hate it, we are required by law to answer the subpoena, and we certainly don't want to get dragged into this lawsuit. But we're going to have to go and get some archaic files from, Timbuktu, and we have no idea what is there, what format it's in. What if it's something that's encrypted, or what if there's something that's privileged, or what if there's PII there that we need to redact and not let out of our organization? At this point in time, you might want to consider getting an 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗀 expert. And you could get an expert in terms of the data collection, helping you get those data sources that are either too complicated or you don't have the tools for, or that are archaic. And like in my example, or maybe you need an 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗀 expert that has tools that you don't have to help you collect those in a defensible way and make an audit trail for your chain of custody. Maybe you need an 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗀 expert that's going to help you with that review. I need for somebody to help me look through this and make sure I don't have PII or sensitive information that I'm letting outside of my organization. So those are some examples of why you might want to have an 𝗖𝗵𝗶𝗀 expert. And then you also want to make sure that when you are looking for that expertise, that those folks are aware of the law and the standards that we must uphold so that we can prove up data authenticity and integrity. And are they prepared to testify in court as such?
Which is something that you should consider when hiring a vendor. If you're hiring a vendor for a specific matter and you think there's a distinct likelihood that that matter might go to trial, then you might want to weigh that person's testifying experience more heavily in that decision. But okay, Bree, are you ready to talk about your favorite thing ever?
Oh my goodness.
Do you want to talk chain of custody?
Yeah. So chain of custody. Oh, my favorite topic ever. But part of the reason why I kind of joke around about this being my favorite topic is that I once had a job in a place that people decided they were going to preserve hard drives by using Post-it notes and sticking them in a box. And 5 years later, all the adhesive on those Post-it notes fell off.
Oh, no.
Here we are with a box of Post-it notes in one corner and a stack of hard drives in the other corner. And the fun part is, because we don't know who they belong to, we don't know how they were encrypted. So this is one of the reasons why.
The game of Tetris no one ever wanted to play.
Oh my God. That's like one of the worst days. Like, hey, Bree, we got this box of stuff. Can you figure it out? And I'm like, wait, what the? And it's like everything that you look at, you're just like, no, this can't get worse. It just got worse. So that is when chain of custody became something that I cared a lot about, because I never wanted to find myself in that situation again. So what chain of custody is, it's chronological documentation of the custody, control, transfer, and analysis of physical or electronic evidence. It's kind of like keeping a journal of the lifetime of whatever that device or that data is, where it's gone, where it's been, who it's been hanging out with, and all the things it's experienced. So things that are important about a chain of custody are that it's something that everybody within your organization is educated on. And people that I can think of right away that need to understand what a chain of custody is your HR department. Because a lot of times when people are terminated for reasons that chain of custody all of a sudden becomes important for, they're terminated by HR and their devices are taken at that time, or somehow they're returned to HR, and HR are the people that get it first. The other people that need to know about chain of custody is your IT department, because if it's not HR they're being sent to, then it's being sent to some guy or gal at a help desk in some IT department to wipe and refurbish whatever those devices are, or clearing up that data on drives and the like virtually. So IT, HR, one thing to think about when you do put together a chain of custody plan is that you have a very user-friendly, clear way that people can communicate and are communicating the right information. Think about it like an employee record. If I know that the person's name is Angie, that's great. That narrows it down to all the Angies that work there. But what if there's multiple Angies? And what if there's multiple Angies named Angie Smith? Well, then Angie needs to have an employee ID number because that's her unique ID. Well, so does our data. It's going to have a device number or a maker model of the cell phone, or it's going to have a specific path location on wherever it is in OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint or whatever. There's going to be a unique identifier for that data. Also, things that are helpful to have, like PIN numbers or passwords, are nice to record on a chain of custody. So when you are collecting that data from the pissed off employee, you can ask them for their PIN number so you can access their mobile device. Just my tip, but you're not always going to get full cooperation with that. You also need to make sure that you have a place to document the date, the time, and remember that you may want to take a picture. What if you get a broken device? What if somebody busted their cell phone? You want my cell phone? I'll give you my cell phone. Take a picture of that and document the date that happened, because that will be your proof in court of that it wasn't you, it was somebody else or some other reason why that's destroyed. The location of data, especially if it's coming in from other countries, is super important because there are different laws that we have to make sure we are following when data is being transferred across country lines. So that's something
especially in the privacy context.
Yeah. So that's something we want to take into consideration. Also, try to steer away from paper chains of custody. If you can use something like DocuSign to have people, authenticate and sign something online, that's preferred. Also, with your devices that you're actually obtaining that you're going to hold on to, like maybe you are holding on to hard drives, make sure you bag and tag them with a tag that's not going to fall off the damn bag. Okay, so let me talk about chain of custody from a different perspective, because I already hear all the people out there being like, dude, this doesn't even apply to me because all of my data is stuff that we work on in Teams or SharePoint or Microsoft, whatever. We collect that through a tool. So I don't need a chain of custody. Well, yeah, you do. And your chain of custody is actually being done for you if you have the right tool. It's called an audit log. That's the same thought, is that I can prove up, this is where the data came from. This is how I took it. This is when I took it. This is the state of which it was in. Here's all the errors that I came in contact with. Here's anything that was skipped or any exceptions that were made. Here are the different things that I asked when I went through the processing steps. This is how I deduped it. I did denist it. These were the different criteria I used to filter it by. That's all part of what we mean by chain of custody. All right.
Your software is doing that shit for you in the background. So
yeah, and you're welcome.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Bree, I feel very, very happy for you that you got to talk about your favorite thing. I love giving you a platform for that. I'm going to talk about my favorite thing now, which is sanctions.
Wow.
And like legal budgeting. Love a good legal budget. So I'm going to switch gears. Let's talk about how errors in self-collection can lead to increased legal costs and potential sanctions. Errors in self-collection can lead to disputes over the admissibility of evidence. Coming back to that concept, like integrity is compromised, authenticity compromised, you're going to start having fights about whether you can bring it into court. Those fights are big dollars. Like if you're looking up Google reviews of restaurants, it's like $4 signs, right? Those things are very expensive. And you're going to waste time and resources addressing them. If you'd been smart about it up front, you wouldn't have ended up in a situation where you needed to fight about it. A part of that bag, you're going to have, just your standard legal fees, your billable rate for your lawyers, but you also might have to hire experts or consultants to go back and parse out what you did and was it defensible and is this data actually authentic and is its integrity intact? And those experts also a ton of money. Say you have to have a motions practice about this. And a motion is just a document you file with the court asking them to do something. So this might be, we want you to exclude evidence because we don't think it is authentic. Defending that is going to cost you like minimum 40, 50 grand probably. And so we're not talking about chump change here. It's big money. And then on top of that, there is the possibility of sanctions, right? Like if you fuck this up in such a way that you cannot get authentic data, you can't get data that still has its integrity intact, you could be sanctioned. And one possible sanction is money sanctions, right? Like you could get hit with, the court could slap you with a fine, basically. And the fine can be nominal, it could be $1 or it could be millions. And then you also, apart from the money stuff, if you screw up evidence that is so integral to the case that the integrity of the entire lawsuit is tossed out the window, the judge can do some pretty extreme things. The judge can affect a dismissal of your case. The judge can mandate that an adverse inference instruction be presented to the jury. And what that means is the court will tell the jury, you can assume that because the party, screwed up this evidence, deleted this evidence, whatever, you can assume that evidence was bad for them. Or the court could say, you must assume that evidence was bad for them. So really just like bad options all around if you screw this up.
Right.
I think before we close it out, there are a couple cases where you might actually just want to self-collect.
So we were preparing for this episode and Angie and I are like, you should never, never, ever self-collect. That's the worst thing you can ever do. And I'm like, dude, I've totally done that. I've totally
Right.
self-collected and it wasn't a big
do
deal.
as I say, not as I do, obviously.
And so I brought it up. I was like, look, it's totally not even realistic. If I get served a third party subpoena and they're like, hey, we need all the records that you have from 1962 about how the pencil was created, like whatever it is. And you're like,
what the fuck?
I know. Dude, we don't have any more records of that. Maybe there's one piece of paper in like Iron Mountain somewhere. I mean, the things that are just obscure and looking for a very limited amount of information, I would say those are times that you might think about, like, especially when it's paper records, because there is no metadata to really protect in those instances. You want to protect yourself just in terms of your record keeping, like, hey, this is from our box in Iron Mountain, but that's not as detrimental as, well, now we don't know the last date that it was modified and we can't prove up where it was moved. Well, no, you can't because it's a paper record. So I would say something like that. Also, if it's something that's the regular course of business, like say I'm an insurance company and I get asked for policy documentation often. Like a lot of times people aren't really asking for individual policy things for insureds. They're just asking about our product, like marketing material. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. And we're just going to put these all on a marketing drive and we're just going to pull it down. This is what this looks like every single time. That might not be the worst thing if you lose any metadata. It's the same documentation, same 5 documents every time. It's not a big deal to Bates label it in Adobe or whatever you have. It's not an actual eDiscovery tool. Those are some one-offs that I can think of that really aren't a big whoop if you do lose metadata on the marketing material that's also on your public website. That kind of stuff isn't really that big of a deal. But
okay.
It's very far and few between, though. I would say that.
Yeah, I'm going to add one more to like agreed on all of that, especially the paper documents piece. Like I used to do a lot of like construction design litigation. A lot of the documents in those cases were engineer like field notes on site, right? And there's just there's no metadata there. So yeah, totally okay. But the other one I wanted to add is just kind of little piddly low stakes lawsuits. God, someone crashed their car through our fence and we have to take her to small claims court. I'm not hiring an eDiscovery vendor for that. Are you kidding me? Like, absolutely not. So things like that, where the cost of a vendor, could dwarf the cost of the lawsuit, right? Or dwarf the damages alleged in a lawsuit. It's always going to be a cost benefit analysis, right? And if you're willing to take the risk of not hiring a vendor and not doing it right because of the circumstances of your case, okay. Like that's your business decision to make.
I totally agree. Hopefully we've done an okay job, at least. Talking about self-collection today, some of the pitfalls that you fall into, some things that you want to look out for, and then sometimes that it might actually be okay if you do it. Hopefully this was insightful for you today. Before Angie closes us out, I do want to give you guys a couple of things to look forward to that we are super excited about. One thing that we're both stoked about is that the two of us will be in person again, presenting at the Techno-Security Conference that's in Pasadena, California. So y'all
on September 16th and 17th.
Yes. And okay, this is going to be my third time to go to the Techno-Security Conference, and I freaking love it. At Techno-Security, it's a totally different vibe, and you get to learn a lot about forensics and data security. But there's also an eDiscovery track, which is why Angie and I are going, and we're going to speak on investigations. Dun, dun, dun. We are so excited. And the people that run the Techno-Security Conference have agreed to give our listeners 10% discount to come see us. So come see us, come listen to us. We would love to see you in person, and you'll learn a lot at the conference itself. If you want more information, guess what? we're going to post it on LinkedIn, but we're also going to have some information on our website because we're going to launch a website soon. So get ready for that. Okay. Now I guess you can close out, Angie.
No, that's amazing. So if you want to avail yourself of our 10% off discount code, keep an eye on our LinkedIn page and we will be posting it there. I think that brings us to the end of our show now. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star review and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about us. And of course, please hit us up on LinkedIn or at admin@ediscoverychicks.com with your thoughts, questions, and drink recommendations. That's all. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.